Hello there, it's Josh here from Racing to Profit. Hope you can hear me. I haven't recorded a video for a while. Or hear me and see me in the bottom right-hand corner. I thought I would. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you're watching it and you think I'm speaking too slowly, do click the cog button down below and you can speed up the playback speed and, of course, speed up the video. It's been quite a good few days, really. If Carlsberg did weekends in Racing to Profit Towers, those of you who have been on the email list or social media or on the blog, you won't have missed the launch of the inaugural Racing to Profit Syndicate, which sold out 40 shares and even a waiting list within about 36 hours. So that was all a bit mad. If you've joined us on that journey, and some of you watching this will have done, thank you very much. It's going to be very exciting ahead. You can join the syndicate in front of you here. The syndicate register interest list for the future, and there'll be a few kind of emails you're sent there, and you might well email in wanting to be on the waiting list also. So yeah, that's very exciting, but I'm not here to talk about that. There's plenty of work to do on that front in the days and weeks ahead, but it's an exciting journey. And just the beginning, I am going to, in this video, look back at Storm Home, which was a winner in a 3-mile chase. The 250 at Uttoxeter on Sunday. I'm going to talk briefly through a bit of my thinking. Of course, my members got a full write-up down here, including some statage, and if you like your trainer and jockey stats, do note those kind of 25, 26 furlong handicap chasers, Colin Tizard and Harry Cobton, always worth keeping an eye on. 28, 29% win strike rate, and now around 30 points to starting price in the last 5 years. And various other different bits and pieces. The aim, obviously, is always to try and say something which is entertaining, maybe, or interesting, and that tries to maybe give you something to think about when trying to solve the puzzle yourself, or with betting, or something that might be useful in applying to your own analysis, not just jumps racing and 3-mile chases, but generally also to try and help you find more winners and make more profit and solve more puzzles, which is what it's all about. So I'm going to talk through Storm Home, the race, a bit of what I was thinking. Then I'm going to actually overplay the video replay and talk through what I was thinking when watching it live and what I've thought subsequently for watching it 2 or 3 times. I do think it's a race that may work out quite well because of the profiles of some of the horses within it. But yeah, let's crack on and jump over to the 250 at Uttoxeter. Now, of course, many of you long-suffering readers, watchers, others will know that in recent months, well, mainly since the end of the winter season, my record is half decent, very good in 3-mile plus jumps races, mainly chases. I did spend lots of last season and maybe a year or two before trying to add to my ability within those races by trying to focus or become a puzzle solver of these big class 2 jumps, handicaps, 20 plus runners, some on the flat as well. And if time has taught me anything, it's that, well, time is precious and it's best to specialise, especially, as I say, if you don't have much time, or if, in my case, how I like to run the blog and everything else, and the content I like to produce to help you find your own winners, including the free content I send out in these videos and everything else. So that's kind of lesson number 1, or maybe not lesson, but thought for the day. Number 1 is, if you are stuck for time, and time is precious in terms of what you can dedicate to racing, if you like solving the puzzle, do think about specialising. Maybe not staying chasers, because then you'll have no reason to join the Racing to Profit Members Club or to read my blog, but maybe some other races, sprint handicaps, long distance staying flat races, 2-mile jumps races, 2.5-mile jumps races, bumpers, you name it. There is any number of race types you could specialise in, and that of course gives you a focus every single day in which to narrow down races to look at. You get to know the trainers better, their methods, you get to know the pool of horses, so that I'm now, I suppose, can open a race like this at Uttoxeter. I've watched every single one of these horses run recently in various different races, because obviously I try and keep up to date with most chases and various other things. I know their form, I can picture their recent runs mostly because I've watched them a few times in weeks gone by, and all of that's useful in helping to save time and kind of increase our knowledge, which in theory, both those things combined, saving time, increasing knowledge, may help improve results, which is what it's all about, and of course have some fun along the way. Now, Storm Home, as I said, and if you've watched the video on how I analyse handicap chases or some of my thinking, which I've used previous examples, you'll know that I don't have the odds. I mean, within GG's goals here, which is along with Horse Race Base, the two main tools I use and would be lost without, I keep the odds off because that can sway you, and I don't look at the market until I've had a flick through every race, every horse, got my head around who I kind of like, don't like, and then we'll use the market, have a rough idea on their chance in my head or price to a point, and then flip over to Uttoxeter and kind of make a judgment on price. And yeah, flicking through this race, what was I going to say? Storm Home. If we start with him, I went through this race in its entirety and was mildly surprised when I went over to the market to see that he was 4-1. I thought it'd be a fair bit shorter, and I suppose you'll be thinking, well, why do you say that? He bolted up in this Uttoxeter race here, a class 2, well, class 1 listed. This was a drop in class into a class 2, and it actually was a lesser field. He won by 9.5 lengths, tanked on the front along with Little Bruce there, which was the same as happened in this race, jumped really well. It didn't do anything wrong. You have to watch. You can look on paper and see he won by 9.5 lengths. That's clearly decent. Watch the replay, watch the race. There's winning by 9.5 lengths and there's winning by 9.5 lengths. He bolted up. You can tell by how strong a horse is at the finish. The jockey after the last, what his hands are doing, what his legs are doing. Is he just pushing out, easing down, giving the impression the horse had plenty more to come? And that a £10 rise for this half-ton plus beast would mean sod all, which can be the case with an informed staying chaser. We also had the Racing Post ratings. Those of you who've watched various other videos will know that I use these as a guide, and I kind of took that from watching one of Paul Keeley's videos once, kind of probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. You wouldn't have found me talking about Racing Post ratings then, but they are a good feel and a good guide for what the horse has achieved against their mark, and try and use that to project whether or not they can build on it from their new mark, if of course they won or have performed. You get horses who lose and perform but actually post a career best Racing Post rating and so on, and you're trying to see if the horse is progressive, and you can use Racing Post ratings to do that. And you can see here, really, 130, 127, 130, 140. It's kind of giving an impression of progression through performance. And he posted 140 there from a mark of 125. When you get kind of a performance that's 10, 15, 20 above on the Racing Post rating against the actual official rating figure, that's always worth noting. He went up £10. That wasn't going to stop him. The last day in a jumps race, that's one bad jump or two scruffy jumps, negates such a rise. And if you can jump really well, helps even more, of course. And we can see there off this 135, he posted a 146, so he's improved yet again. Why was I confident that he could build on this performance here? Well, he was clearly fit in form. It was only 28 days ago. There was no logical reason why he would put up a performance like that and then not. Of course, horses aren't machines. Sometimes they can get out of bed the wrong side. They might overheat, especially on a hot day in the summer. Something might go wrong, whatever. But there was no logical reason on paper I could think why he wouldn't be able to back up and build on that run. And then, of course, you're making an assessment on price and chance. He was unexposed over the distance. This was his first run over 26 furlongs. So again, always that idea of trying to focus on horses who are unexposed, more to come, who you make an assessment, who may not have showed their best yet. That's generally where I like to focus. Of course, there's always the odd one that doesn't do that. A Vintage Clouds in last season's Ultima Handicap Chase would be an example of that. That's a horse coming back down the ratings with a high level of form, reaching a past performance that was good enough to win on the day and beating the unexposed Happy Go Lucky chasing him in second. So you're always obviously assessing on a race by race basis, but in general that starting point on unexposed, more to come in conditions, isn't a bad thing. It was clear that this step up to 26 furlongs, combined with, I think, well, couple more things, a more aggressive ride. They made more use of him. The horse seemed to be getting some confidence and enjoy being more on the front end, lobbing along. Brendan Powell jumped on this time. This was Harry Kimber, who was a £7 claimer, or is a £7 claimer, has been riding his last 4 starts. He rode a treble at Newton Abbot the other day, which I believe, for Bill Turner, were his first winners in at least a year. I think he was a 0 from 100 rides going into that day at Newton Abbot, so fair play to him. But that's an example that, this horse had a very inexperienced pilot, especially over fences. Now, I done him a bit of a disservice because he was, before the last 2 wins there, of course, he was 0 from 12. He had placed a lot. That did raise the odd questions for him, but if you go back and watch some of these races, he was staying on over Newton Abbot here, which was 26 furlongs over hurdles. Something went wrong at Hereford there. Maybe the ground was too firm. Fell at Taunton here. Now, he was going okay, actually, but again, 23 furlong, bit on the back foot. I used this, as per the write-up, an example that the one question, or one of the niggles for Storm Home in this race when making an assessment, he carried 10 stone here, lightweight, you can fly along off the bottom of the handicap. Of course, you've got the horse lumped up to 11 stone 12 because now he was the best horse in the race, taking a drop in class. Obviously, there's some horses which are not big enough to carry such a weight, but you want to look for examples of them doing so, and there was an example of 11 stone 12. He was creeping into it, he was running his race. That weight wasn't going to anchor him down, unless of course you've been to the races, you've seen the horses live, you take notes on their size maybe, or you know how big they are. Unless they're a pony and they're pretty small, most kind of staying chasers can cope with kind of being near the top of the weights, especially when the ground is decent and not an absolute bog, which obviously can then weigh them down. So that was another kind of tick in his box. Harry Cobton jumping on with those stats I just showed for the trainer jockey combo, and Harry Cobton's one of the best chase jockeys around. And when we watch the video back, you'll see a few of examples of that. The horse had the form. Now, a few horses from kind of further down the field had come out of this and not done anything, but the horses that he was beating within this race gave some substance that it was a much better race, in the sense that, let me just get rid of the comments, ratings, what am I doing? Here we go. So yeah, he had Little Bruce, who's a half decent yardstick, who was clearly fit to my eyes to run a race like that. First run for Charlie Longsdon. He had some okay winter form to his horse, and there is a difference between winter and summer form. Winter generally much more competitive, better animals. Mellow Ben was very well handicapped, for all he's a bit of a mercurial character. Land of Smiles was unexposed, came into it on the back of a win on winning Perth's, one of their big handicaps, the Gold Cup, was it? Manila Celebration just loves it around here, even at his age, arrived in form, but he beat all of these good and proper 16 runner race. Hard pace on the front, as you could see, and it generally looked a decent effort. And he also had some form in this haul away, so he had further form, further substance. Haulaway then came and ran a decent third at Kelso in a half-decent race, bringing together some decent summer form lines. He then won an OK Class 3 hurdle on his next start. You can see how some of these races are working out, and that he was in and around future winners. Like I said, at the time, going into this race, actually, when he was the first time he won 18 to 1, I had some questions given he'd yet to win over fences, but that combination of the rise in trip, better jockey, maybe getting experience, that more positive ride. And of course, we've got that situation where the Tizard horse yard, a lot of them have been ill. I think a potassium deficiency, according to Colin. All those different things, yet he was still able to run his race and run in second, and that's the kind of thing you can mark up also. The other big positive that he had, and I should mention, other than that kind of thought for the day, number one is pace. And, you know, when you've got excellent pace maps like this, it's pretty predictable. easy enough to predict how you think horses are going to line up, and that is vitally important if you do not do pace analysis. In any sort of your betting, if you like puzzle solving and trying to pick your own, you really must. There's plenty of pace maps and free resources as well. If you're a registered user of GG's Goal, free registered user, I think you get pace maps every Monday of every race possibly, and 5-6 races of the day you get access to the full race cards, including these excellent pace maps. As I've said many times before, 64% of handicap chases are won by horses who either lead or race prominently, and it's always never a bad thing trying to make a case or have something on side that's going to be at the front here. Storm Home and watching the replays of his race back, and Little Bruce always going to be up there. I could make a judgment on Egan Hero not having the class to lay up, and we'll look at his race, and I'll talk when I look at the replay about class, pace, natural travelling pace, and how that influences where horses slot in a different in their positions they slot in a race, and how that is down to how fast the horse's legs are and class, and trying to make an assessment of class is important. Friends don't ask, was he going to be up there? Was he going to have the ability to be up there because of his form? And that's something we can ponder soon also. And then the likes of Montana, Ocean Cove, Neville's Cross, etc., slotting in behind. I wouldn't go, or I may go as far to say as that all of the horses in this race will win more handicap chases in the next few months, I think, or in the next year. Of course, our job, and my job, is always to land on them at the right time. And I will, we'll watch the video replay maybe, then I can come back and talk about some of these different horses. But hopefully, yes, there's different things I've said there about Storm Home, the things that I was thinking about. Of course, he was a course and distance winner, course form. He just ticked a lot of boxes, and I thought he was the best horse in the race on what any of these had done recently. And I couldn't understand really why he wasn't favourite when going over to the market, and he actually drifted a point from 4s to 5s, which just shows you sometimes the market doesn't have a clue, because he then bolted up. Let's jump over to the replay. I hope you're still with me. I hope I'm saying something of interest, and let me talk through this race and what I was thinking when it jumped off, and what I've kind of thought subsequently. Let me just turn the sound off for the video, so hopefully you can see that in front of you. If I go full screen, is that going to be okay? Hold on a second. Yeah, actually, I don't think we need to go full screen. We can just watch this and we'll play it and I'll talk over. So that pace map, we had Little Bruce and Storm Home. We thought we're going to be near the front, and there we go. Little Bruce and Storm Home are near the front. Now, the thing to say about this, if you like to try and work out why horses are where, you can look at jockeys' hands. Now, if we look at Harry Cobden's hands here, they're nicely relaxed. At the bottom of the neck of the horse, he is going the pace that he wants, as is Keelan Woods on Little Bruce. Both of these are going in what I would call their natural lobbing along pace. They're within their comfort zone. Now, their comfort zone and their racing ability and their travel, their ability to travel at this pace on the front because of their class and their ability, has taken some of these out of their comfort zone. Now, Friends Don't Ask in the orange here, he led last time in his race at Newton Abbot, where he beat the 12-year-old Mr. Mafia. And going this pace that he's going here was probably good enough to be at the front of that race, if that makes sense. But here he is up against superior rivals with quicker legs who can have a travelling pace, and a comfortable travelling pace within their comfort zone, which naturally just keeps them in this position. They've jumped off prominent. They're going the pace the jockeys want to. You can tell they're not over racing. Certainly not Storm Home isn't over racing. You can see where Harry's hands are. He's a great jockey. You can see him spot strides here. 1, 2, 3, jump. And you can see him with his legs, and he's counting those 3 strides. Now, at this point, I'm delighted. I'm thinking, if these two repeat that last performance, I didn't think Little Bruce would have enough to overturn that form. And then you've got everything else slotting in behind. You've got Friends Don't Ask, who I was thinking might be up there. I had a question on class. He's a bit keen. He doesn't like being in behind horses on this evidence, I don't think. You can see here he's over racing. He's going a bit harder than Nick Schofield wants him to go. You can see he's kind of pulling occasionally at his neck. He gets lit up when he hits a bit of air there. He's over racing a little bit. He is still only 6. That was a half decent performance last time. He's just bumping into superior rivals here. Maybe a slight drop back in class. We know he stays 3 miles 5. He likes the likes of Fakenham, Newton Abbott. He will race in weaker races than this before the summer is out. And I wouldn't be put off him just yet. We've got Neville's Cross travelling here. The other thing, actually, before I go on to Neville's Cross, we've got Montana at the back, who I'll mention. Now, he, on his Foss last races, was able to travel kind of where Looks Now Like Brian is, and where Friends Don't Ask is. He was tracking the pace in some of those earlier wins in the summer. Here, at the pace they're going, he is unable to lay up. He's unable to keep up. That might be partly to do with the course and distance as well. And again, when you specialise, you get to know these horses. He won a Class 5 around here over this course and distance, where he was also outpaced and came with a rattling late run. So possibly not the class and the pace. Maybe it's just the track. He does take a bit of riding, and I will focus on him as they come and kind of go around the second circuit. We've got Young Wolf here already struggling. He came into this on paper looking like an out of form horse. Sometimes an out of form horse is just an out of form horse. Neville's Cross, let me go back to him for a second. He is jumping well, and when I flip back to the start, to the race card, we can look through his profile, but he's unexposed. He's one for the notebook. I'm not 100% sure he stayed this trip, but this was a jumping class. His jumping is clearly getting better. He's been under Stan Shepherd last time out, which they seem to get on well. Johnny Burke decked him a couple of times, so I think Connections probably just want to try something a bit different. And, you know, most of his jumping, that's a lovely jump. Stan asking him, see a stride. He was guessy at a couple, but they are going a half decent pace here. He's in the perfect position here if good enough. Montana being pushed along, Young Wolf at the back. Looks Now Like Brian's an interesting one. Charlie Price, I'm not quite sure on the ride. He took off with him at times. Look, you can see Friends Don't Ask there, a bit keen. I'm getting excited now because of the gap these two are putting between the rest of the field, and they're still absolutely both tanking. They come to 5 out at some point, and we'll note Little Bruce making an error, or slipping on landing, being unlucky. You've got Ocean Cove here who's being outclassed. Legs just won't go quick enough. Looks Now Like Brian earlier in the race took a position where he took off with the jockey and went forward, then he went back, then he hit a couple. If I was the owner, I'd move him from Tin Vaughan's for various different reasons. Anyway, I won't talk about that operation too much, but I find them so hard to read and the horses to be consistent. Well, there we go. So I'm talking over that. Let's just go back before this fence. So Little Bruce is tanking along here. Keelan Wood's moving his hands a bit more. He's asking him for a bit more. You can see Harry Cobton is so relaxed. Hands are still. I'm absolutely loving life, having had a good go at Storm Ahead here. Storm Home, even, I should say. This error here, poor Little Bruce. Jumps it well. Oh, just slips and pitches on landing. Game over. Lose your action a bit like that in a race at this pace. So he's one for the notebook. We'll touch on him again as I finish the video and I crawl towards 30 minutes on 23 now. But he was going along there. He may have been second, he may have been third, he wouldn't have won, but he would have finished a fair bit closer. The rest of these are struggling. Bad Egan Hero, arguably of the rest in behind, may well have got the most efficient ride. He was able to hold a position comfortably. He hasn't moved up and down through the field. He travelled well and jumped well, and that was a half-decent run from the old boy. Here we've got Neville's Cross, who travelled into it well. This was what makes me think, does he stay? Does he fully get home over this trip? He was stepping up from 2 miles 4, although he won over 3 miles or so over hurdles, but chasing and hurdles is obviously different. Still a decent effort. We've got Montana, bless him, still running on, and this is arguably a run to highlight. You've got Harry Cobton still absolutely tanking on the front. 1, 2, 3 jumps, see a stride, wonderful jockey, as is Sean Bowen, over a fence, and Montana's just running on again. Put him over 3 miles 4, 3 miles 6, give him a stay-in test. Will that help? Game over here. Just jump the last and you win. Looks now like Brian staying on again. Very odd performance, yo-yoing up and down through the field. So there's a few things there you can pick up as you watch. And again, you watch that and think, Storm Home has bolted up. Now, let's not get too excited about the form. He's beat the 10-year-old Ballyegan Hero, who's admirable in himself. Montana, who you saw, ears being scrubbed off. Quite a remarkable performance because he looked kind of half flat out. He's only 7. Now, I don't know if that's because he's a bit of a monkey, and I just want to check because I cannot remember if they've ever put headgear on him, which suggests he's not. But I would not be shocked if after that Sean said to his dad, can we try him in a visor or blinkers or even some cheek pieces, which they did try a couple of times down here. He doesn't have an attitude problem. He's genuine, he tries, he gallops. It's not about that. It's about trying to make him travel a bit better and travel a bit sweeter, and will some more extreme headgear. They have tried him in blinkers over hurdles, didn't seem to work. Do the job. Or is it simply the case that that track doesn't really suit? That is not the first time he's been outpaced around there. He was over Uttoxeter, 2 furlongs short of mine, staying on all the way to the death. But his 2 wins are at Fosslas, galloping, wider expanse, that sweeping bend into the straight, and a long straight in which to wind up and get going. And he's been doing all of his best work late, especially in that Fosslas Class 3. Now, it is only summer form. On some of that evidence, I haven't looked at his breeding, but given how his run style, you might be in agreement that he may be worth a go. Certainly back over 26, but maybe back at a Fosslas or somewhere else. Maybe even 28 furlongs, maybe 3.5 miles. He does look like the sort that he might just keep going, but it would help him if he could be able to hold a position through his race and not use up so much energy, and the jockey use up so much energy. But he's only 2 from 6 over fences. He will win more chases, maybe a drop in class, doing a few of those other things I've just said. Some of this form reads okay. Beat an unexposed Fox Pro in that Fosslas race. That's looked to have produced the odd winner and decent performance since as well. So he is worth one for the notebook. Friends Don't Ask is only 6. This was just about form and class. Whereas at Newton Abbot, he had the pace in that Class 4 to lead, the 12-year-old Mr. Matthew, both of them went at it for a time. This was a different kettle of fish. Stepped up to a Class 2 against some decent summer horses going at a decent pace. But he's very consistent. 11 chases, 3 wins, placed at 1 or placed in more than half of them. We can see that he does stay 29 furlongs at his right class. I think he was probably outclassed in this Class 3 here, but he kept on again. He kept on in that Fodwell race. He won that Newton Abbot race. RPR of 116 in that Newton Abbot race, which was a career best, only up to 111 here. So there's hope there that he's still well handicapped, just when he's placed into the right race and right conditions again. And he won't find, there'll be a lot lesser chases like this. As I've said, Ballyegan Hero has been a decent purchase for Paul Henderson. He's 10 though. He's always going to be open to attack from more unexposed and younger legs. But he's probably going to win a few more. Ocean Cove is interesting. He came into this off 125. If the internet would pick up and load, hold on a second. So here we've got Ocean Cove. Now he's won from 13 over fences. Storm Home obviously won a big race, and he was going into that 0 from 12 a couple of starts ago. This Doncaster run was okay. That was off 127. He's now on 125, so he's back below that mark. I think he's a bit moody at times. I think there is a reason he has headgear, although he did not take to the blinkers those 2 runs there, so that can probably be ignored. This Gleno form was okay. I think Gleno won on his next start. This probably was a bit deep for him. Fontwell, he was staying on, and that Schnabel was well handicapped, and I think he bolted up on his next start also. Again, this Fontwell race may be too deep. Maybe I'm making excuses. He does have ability when it clicks. It's just trying to get him to click. Maybe if he returns to Doncaster. Trainers can be creatures of habit, and I would, and you'd look back and go, where has he performed best? Should we get him and aim him up and try and find a race at Doncaster for him? Of course, none of those over fences at this time of year, but maybe he won't win until he appears there again, and he might be even lower in the handicaps. That's something to keep an eye on. That run and the Fontwell run suggest he has ability. Perth, it all happened a bit too quick for him. They didn't go quick enough. There was a make or leader that we were on also that day. yeah, he stayed on, but that track didn't suit him either. So maybe a more galloping expanse, more galloping than Uttoxeter, and he needs to be on a going day. But he is well handicapped again, and he's only won from 13 over fences. Young Wolf came into this with 2Ps and, hasn't done much at all on recent efforts, and he ran as such. You can get into the habit of trying to make too many excuses for a horse, although everything has a price, of course. Some of this form down here, he needs decent ground. This is the first time he's got decent ground in an okay race for a while. Does he need dropping in class? He won a handicap there off 138. He's now down to 128. He's very well handicapped if and when John Joe refines and rediscovers the key. Is it going to be a small field? Is it going to be decent ground? And when they're actually more aggressive and he can lead, and he may actually just be a horse who enjoys leading and being on the front, which he hasn't done for a while either. And if he's behind horses, he sulks, as we saw when watching that replay back. He's only 2 from 9 over fences. He should have more chase wins in him. Like I said, some of those conditions, tracks, so on and so forth down here, it might not be a shock that looking at all of that, if we want to look at a profile, look at his wins: 5-runner field, 7-runner field, 4-runner field, 4-runner field, 6-runner field. Is a small field the key to this horse dominating a small field? Lets him be confident, lets him know who's boss. That might be the key for Young Wolf, along with decent ground. So that's something to keep an eye on for what is a well handicapped horse. Looks now like Brian off 129. I've just quipped over 30 minutes, but hopefully you're still with me. And I'm saying something useful. Wins at Carlisle down here off 129, 125. He, after this run, is going to be below his last winning mark. And of course, some trainers can look at what their highest winning mark was and then work backwards and try and get them to below their last winning mark. Legitimately, most of them, running in the wrong conditions, wrong trip, wrong track, wrong ground, half fit, whatever, wrong jockey. Yes, so he's now well handicapped again. As you can see, he can hit a fence, but he does stay well. He used to have some ability back in November 18. He's clearly been a bit hard to train since, so maybe he's got some questions, but he loves Carlisle. Maybe they'll aim him at early October again, or that November, one of these two races, because he will be well handicapped if he turns up there again. He can be patiently ridden. He can hit a fence. He kind of needs them to stop and come back to him, but he does have a decent record at Carlisle, which is something to note as well. This was a half decent run because he travelled with zest, over raced, ran away with Charlie a bit. He then dragged him to the back. He then went forward a bit. It was a bit of a strange ride, really. Not in a dodgy sense, in a, hold him up properly out the back and get him to settle. He seemed to get run away with a bit. You don't really want to see horses yo-yo up and down through a race. Well, I don't anyway. And yeah, anyway, you can look at that, but he's well handicapped again. He is 4 from 15, 7 places. Again, the type who may always bump into something that's a bit better treated, or is working their way back up the handicap, or working their way up for the first time the handicap scale. A more lightly raced one, or a horse like Storm Home, where it's just clicked. Although, of course, the handicapper will catch up at some point. Neville's Cross is unexposed. 1 from 5 over fences. That win came in a class 3 over 20 furlongs. 136 RPR off a 125, up £5 here. He was up in trip, the furthest he's faced over fences. He did okay in a small field, Hereford 26 furlong. So maybe he will stay over fences in a lesser race. But I actually thought he travelled and jumped generally okay, but he just weakened, and he weakened pretty quickly from 2 out. And I wouldn't be shocked if Tom Lacey drops him back down in trip and back down in class, maybe. A slightly smaller field. You can see here his confidence jumping went a bit astray. He fell twice, then put in a shoddy round here, although they just tried to get him round, I think, for confidence boosting purposes, which is perfectly fine after you've fallen twice. And then Stan Shepherd took over, as you can see here. So again, that's, I suppose, a small example of a jockey and a jockey change making a difference, especially on a chaser and over fences if they've had a few issues. And yeah, we'll see how good this form works out. But the horse clearly has some ability. Like I said, maybe back over 20 furlongs, slight drop in class. We'll see if this race starts to work out well. It's hard to get a grip on how good he is or what he's been beating, but I should think Tom will find another opportunity for him at the during the summer. I've touched on Storm Home, or maybe I'll finish with him in a minute. Little Bruce ran here off 135, and due to that slipping up, which might be a blessing in disguise, may well get dropped a couple of pounds here, because his last win, as we can see here, his highest winning mark to date was a 132. Now, does he need to get back below that mark or to that mark? Not necessarily, but possible. He's only 3 from 15 7 place over chases, so he's 9. He's not exactly over raced. He could become the new kind of loose chips for the Charlie Longston yard in years to come. That wonderful style of running on the front end, jumping, galloping horses into submission. He does have ability. He stays well. Charlie Longston is going to win chases with him. He will get him making all, maybe back into a class 3. I was trying to think what might be a legitimate target, and I can't think, and I should look before I said this comment, when, for example, something like the Durham National around Sedgefield, where the ground's normally half decent, he could bomb around that little place. Obviously, Catterick is an option, those little tight tracks, because of his running style. He's fairly small, fairly nippy. You can get out on the front end. You can just make lengths around bends, because everything, you can only run so fast around a bend, and if you're already ahead, of course, it's harder for horses to come from further back, and so on and so forth. And yeah, you can see there some of his form, but he's worth going into the notebook because he is getting towards his last winning mark. He isn't overly raced over fences, and because of his running style, that running on the front end, that jumping, his enthusiasm for the game is going to see him take a lot of horses out of their comfort zone. He did take everything else out of their comfort zone pretty much in this race, bar Storm Home. So he's one to watch, and he looks like he's been doing all right. That was a 138. 2 starts ago for his first run for Charlie, which was his best performance since that win in January 2020. Change of yards, etc. Looks like he's settled in fine. One to note. So yeah, Storm Home, we'll finish on him. Like I said, general point, it might be worth noting every horse in this race, because for one reason or another, whether they're becoming well handicapped again against previous old form, or with the likes of Montana, Friends Don't Ask, Neville's Cross, they still have upside potential and have yet to reach their ceiling. Obviously, their horse is worth noting for those reasons. Storm Home, we won't get carried away with this form, because this Ballyegan Hero who chased him home is an admirable horse, but he is 10, and we can see some of his form down here, just class 4 handicaps. But on this evidence, he might do something okay again. It was a decent ride from Tom O'Brien. Efficient ride. The front 2 was a good ride from Little Bruce and Storm Home. The rest of them through the race were moving up and down. Ballyegan Hero was switched off, stayed pretty much in the same position, raced efficiently, and that's probably one of the reasons he was able to finish off his race and run a decent second. But Storm Home, he will go up in the handicap, of course, from this. Going up to the handicap from 130s to 140s to mid 140s in summer chases is one thing. That doesn't mean, if you bumped into a 140 horse in a winter chase, he might get chewed up and spat out. We shall see. There is, in my head, a difference in class between summer, even decent summer races, and some winter races. He does handle softer ground. His style now, that ability to run and trap along on the front end, he's sorted, he's jumping out, he looks a confident, happy horse. That style alone is always going to keep him competitive, especially in races without much pace, for obvious reasons. And he is consistent, and he does try. So there could still be more to come. We shall see what they do. They'll probably want to strike while the iron's hot, and while he's in this form, why would you put him away and wait? And we'll see where they send him next. I'm sure there might be another half-decent summer chase somewhere in the next month or two before the winter horses start coming out. So with that said, yes, I will shut up. I've been going on nearly 40 minutes, which is clearly plenty long enough. But there's always something interesting to say about these types of races and the kind of things, hopefully I have said something interesting and useful for you that you can apply to your own betting. If it's going to be one thing, that's straightforward. Well, two things: specialize if you want to like narrow down a day's racing and different race types, if you like that kind of thing. And two, pace. Whether it's flat, whether it's jumps, start using pace maps. Start trying to visualize where you think horses are going to be, nearer the front, nearer the back. So if that's one kind of action point or takeaway from this video, other than some kind of notebook horses and various other different bits and pieces, it's that pace, that importance of, if you can find front runners or those that are going to sit near the front whose comfort and class speed, whose natural travelling speed keeps them near the front and takes others out of their comfort zone, you're kind of halfway there. And yeah, vitally important is pace, setup, where a horse slots in through a race. And yeah, if you do one thing or take one thing away to kind of dabble with and try yourself, make sure it's that. Like I said, you can get all of pace maps for a certain day during the week with free registered membership for GG's Gold. There's a link below the video for that, and you get access to 5 free race cards a day also with the pace maps. And you can just start practicing and getting a feel, looking at the pace map. Does the race work out in that way? Various different other things you can look at with pace. That's probably a different video for another day, but trying to work out who's going to be near the front and why, etc., is always worth pondering. And of course, I believe At the Races has pace maps, and there's probably various different other free race cards and tools as well. But yeah, that'd be one thing to take away. And it's deadly. It's a deadly race position to be in, certainly over fences and handicap chases, because of the fences and the speed you can attack them, and that naturally keeps you ahead depending on your comfort travelling speed. But now I'm getting to the point where I'm repeating myself, I know. So with that said, been a long video, but yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. Hopefully there's something to take away. Do hit the subscribe button below if you're watching on YouTube. Do hit like, hit dislike if you didn't like it, but do post a comment as to why down below if you so want. Any questions, any thoughts, if you think I'm talking nonsense, if I've said something you want me to explore a bit further, any comments at all, do post away below this video on YouTube or on my blog, and I will do my best to answer them. But until the next time, this is Josh saying thanks for watching and bye for now.